Okay. I'm going to give this a second. I am Carrie for Gluten's sake and bringing you another interview, which I'm so excited about. So, going to wait for it to share. Hello, hello. You can say hi when you pop on. Rachael is just going to jump on and then I will invite her. We're going to talk all things celiac, gluten free, mindset, Toronto. So excited. I hope you are learning as much as I am from these interviews. I seriously have already learned so much. So if you haven't caught the other ones, go back and watch them. There's 3 currently in my stories. Hey Rach, okay, I'm gonna invite you to jump on. All right, it's going to connect and then we'll get started. Do.
Whoa!
Yay!
Hi.
Hi!
Hey, it worked.
How are
Which
you?
method is it for you?
Okay, I think I'm gonna pop in my headphones because my
Okay.
phone, I think it's my volume.
Can you
I'm
hear
so
me? Okay.
excited.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, yeah, it's just my phone for whatever reason, but yeah, we're good.
Okay. Cool. Hi.
Yay! Hi!
It's nice to like meet you and
I know, I'm so excited. I like seriously love the world of the internet. I'm just
yeah.
blown away.
And
Blown away.
I brought my gluten effing free mug.
Yes, so good.
What mug will I use today? But this is
Love
good.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just start with introducing yourself, telling people a bit about you.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm Rachel. I'm the founder of a platform called Gluten Freedom, which I started a little over 5 years ago when I went gluten free. Was found out that I had celiac after almost a year of suffering some pretty severe health issues, and then so it was great that I discovered that I couldn't eat gluten, or that I found out what was making me so ill. But then discovering that you can eat gluten, which for me, gluten is like the best. There's a lot of things that I love that contain gluten. So that sparked a whole other challenging journey of discovering like what I could eat, where I could eat. I wasn't really struggling so much in the home. It was more when I was dining out, and it had become a big part of my social life. So I wanted to be able to find out what I could eat at all of these super popular, trendy restaurants that I would want to dine at. So I would call, I would email, I would show up, I would ask all these questions. And what I was finding was that actually a lot of places could accommodate, and there was no resource in Toronto specifically that was sharing this information. So I created that platform and that resource for others. And from there, it's definitely grown, but it started very humbly. It was just me going in on my own and sharing my meals and like what I was eating at these different places. And then I was getting more and more people asking for very specific information, like what are the cross contact risks, what other what other gluten-free options are there? I don't eat this, I don't eat this, are there dairy-free options? So that's when I launched. It was a couple years after I launched my blog that I launched a gluten-free directory where I would take the menu at different restaurants and extract everything that had gluten in it, anything that would be a no-no for us, and I would only display on my site the options that were safe for us, the options that could be modified gluten free, so that if you're looking for a place to dine, you can make that decision on your own. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know, how long have you been gluten free for?
Almost 8 years.
Okay, so yeah, so mine's about 6 years. So I remember before going gluten free, like I would go on the website and look at the menu and like decide what I was going to eat before I went into restaurants. So now I'm able to create a similar experience for gluten-free individuals, and they can know that it's trusted, that it's vetted by someone who also is celiac, who has to. Uh, Oops, I got a notification. That yeah has to live that way so that it's trusted. So my main focus is definitely in Toronto because that's where I'm based. But I have brought it along with me everywhere I travel, everywhere I go. Not as extensively as you have, but I'm doing similar to you, just trying to create gluten freedom and make it accessible, approachable, sexy, cool, fun, um, and freaking delicious for people who are gluten free, no matter where they're at in their journey.
I love that. And I feel like that's a common theme of people I've been interviewing and talking to is really the social aspect that comes
Yeah,
up, right? Like regardless if you're new to the gluten-free life or you're more accustomed to it, like it's being out and eating and dining out, like
yeah,
that's just such a part of our lives that it
yeah,
can be so challenging at first, or even when you're, multiple years in, like maybe you don't have celiac friends or gluten-free friends, and it's just like
yeah,
figuring out how to navigate that. And so I
100%.
love that there are so many resources. Like some people are like, oh, the market's so saturated, there's so many people. And I'm just like, the more resources, the
Yeah,
better, like,
I agree. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of yeah, like I think there's definitely, like, from when I started, I'm sure when you started, there's so many more people out there who are gluten free, who are trying to make a positive impact in this community. And I actually don't look at it as competition. I think it's really amazing. It's amazing for me because I do travel so much. I can refer to resources such as yours, in other parts of the world that I've yet to be. So if there weren't multiple people doing that, it'd be really, I think it would be even more challenging. So it's amazing that there are so many people who are dedicated to spreading gluten freedom around the world, because it just makes our lives that much more enjoyable. I don't want to ever feel like I have to, lower my quality of life, or, miss out on something just because of my food intolerance, or, my food allergy. So, yeah, I say the more the merrier. And I'm, I think we're going to touch on this, but I do a lot of coaching now, and that is a common thing that comes up. But I tell everyone, I'm like, look, there are multiple people who do multiple, like, very similar things, but everyone's got a unique way of spinning it. Everyone's got a unique personality. Your personality and your approach is going to jive with someone more than it will someone else. So, like, do you, like, just like, if that's what you want to do, and it's something you're passionate about, like, go for it.
absolutely. I mean, I feel the very same because it's like everyone could have the same business, right? Be
Yeah.
doing the same thing with the same mission, but the difference is always going to be you and your life
Yeah.
experience and what you bring to the table. And like, no one can do that for you. Like, no one can do the same thing that you're doing because you have your perspective.
Yeah, totally. And, I agree 100%. So I love that we touched on that, because if anyone's tuning in, it's just, yeah, I think a great reminder that we hear, but I think we always need to be reminded that there's room for all of us to fit in. There's more than enough to go around. There is, like, endless resources available. So, yeah, go for it. Like, and look at to others who are doing something similar, for inspiration versus comparison. Like, that's another big thing. Like, if you see someone doing something that you want to do, you know, kind of observe them and see, how are they doing it? How do they make this work? Like, I'm inspired by them, and maybe I can learn a thing or two from what they've done.
Yes, I love that. That's one of my favorite things too is like, okay, if you see somebody else, like that shows you what's possible. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I'm so behind or I'm not good
Uh,
enough or like all those things that naturally come up.
yeah,
But it's like, no, look at what's possible for you because if they did it, like you can do it too.
you can do it. Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure, like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I first started. And
No, nobody
some days I'm just
does.
like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going for it. I feel like, so yeah, it's not like we knew the answers and we just, like, flew to where we are. It's like, no, it's taken years, and you learn along the way. So it's all the part of the journey. And even
Absolutely.
as it pertains to gluten free, like, it was daunting, very scary at the beginning, but you learn, you navigate. And now I think it's like there's just so many more resources out there that it is a lot less scary to become, to find out you have celiac, or to be going gluten free for whatever reason at this stage, in the game, because there are, like, plenty of resources, plenty of, like, recipes or travel resources, restaurant resources. So, like, you're covered, you're good.
Yeah, I agree. So, can you talk a little bit about maybe your transition from leaving your job to your entrepreneur life and kind of what that has looked like for you?
Yeah. So I left. So my journey's been, I'm not going to like go into full detail, but when I first started my blog, I had just left a corporate job of mine. And when I started it, I took a couple months off. It was really stressful. And I think that stress I went through really amplified my symptoms that I was experiencing, because it was just like all hell broke loose. I was just, yeah, I was wiped out. So I took a couple months off. That's when I got this idea to start the blog. So after that, I was working very like casual jobs. I got into the serving industry for a couple years because I wanted the flexibility to work on my blog, my little passion project, while still making some income, but not having to be bound to a desk like 9 to 5 style. I just knew I needed a bit of a shift. So I did that for a couple years, and then there came a point when an opportunity came to me, and it was like so aligned with me. It was to open a gluten-free division at a marketing agency, and I was very close with the founders of the agency. So it was really like just I just feel like the stars aligned. I couldn't say no to it. So I went back to working full time for a couple years. I learned a lot. They taught me a lot. And then it just got to the point where at the same time, like because I was learning so much from them that I could apply to my job, to like my business, it just got to a point that when I did start to apply it, I got busier and busier, and I couldn't juggle everything at once. Like it got to like a breaking point where I was just exhausted. I was working all the time. I was completely like just drained. And I just knew, like, I knew that I was destined to be an entrepreneur. So that transition to me, like in the moment, was really, really hard. I remember like really um, being really like anxious to pull the trigger, and didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And I just knew I couldn't give 110% at that job anymore. And I just, my passion was in my business. So when I finally made that decision and like slowly went down to part-time, and then slowly kind of like, yeah, kind of wean myself off of the full time life. It was really interesting for me because you know what, like when you go from it just being a side hustle to all of a sudden like that's what you're doing, you really have to like restructure your days. You have to really restructure like how you do things. So honestly, so I left it a little over a year ago, about 16 months ago now. Honestly, like the first like 6 7 months, 6 7 8 months was just like learning, like was really just like learning about myself, learning about how to really run a business, learning learning a lot about mindset, because mindset plays a massive role in your success and your ability to keep going when the going's tough. So it was really I would say kind of like my deepest like personal development journey. But you know what, like I've heard it from others too, you just like know it's time. Like I think when you have built your business, because at this point I had been running my blog for like about 4 years now. So like I had put in work, like I had put in a lot of time, I had systems in place. But yeah, I think I just got to a point where I knew like it was just, I couldn't continue to build someone else's dream. Like it was ready for me to fully build my dream. So I don't know if that like fully answered your question, but yeah, it was kind of just a knowing that it was the right time. And it definitely wasn't easy. And there's still moments where, I'm faced with some new challenge in growing a business, but it does get easier after you've experienced those challenges once. And then the second time they come up, it's like, oh, I've been through this and I've gotten over it. So it just like with time, you just kind of pick up like, okay, I can do this. Okay, I can do this. So it's been the most rewarding thing though. I think if anyone is on the cusp of becoming a full-time entrepreneur, be prepared to get really deep with yourself and get really real with who you are. But it's super rewarding. And on the other side of that deep work is where the reward lies.
Love that. I absolutely love that. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think, yeah, like you are your business, and sometimes it's really hard to separate, but it's like you have to show up in the best
Yeah.
mindset possible. And so you have to do the work to figure out like, okay, how do I separate myself from the business and like not take this personally, but understand like I have to do my mindset around like the work around understanding that this is possible for me, and like what limiting beliefs do I have around this. And
Yeah.
that's again where I think it's really important to look to people for inspiration, like not
Mhm.
comparison.
Totally.
And also just to be so gracious with yourself. Like That's what I talk to a lot of people about. It's like we want to look at someone and go, okay, but I want to do this and I'm here, and but they've been in it for 4 years, right? Like
Right.
somebody that's like hasn't started their website. It's like, yeah, but you put in 4 years of work where you had a lot of days that you wanted to pull your hair out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, go on.
No. And so I just think, it's important to like have grace with ourselves in the process of like, it's not going to happen overnight, but I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek's work, but like it starts with why is one of my
Yeah,
favorite books because it is true. It's like if you have a bigger why and you have a purpose, you're going to stick with it when things are hard and when you have those
yeah,
bad days, because you're going to have those bad days
yeah,
and they're going to continue to happen, but it's just the reframe and it's coming back to like, why am I doing this in the first place? Who am I helping? Who am I serving? And
totally.
figuring out how to reframe those moments.
Agreed. Yeah, I think, having the the passion component, which I think is ultimately the why for a lot of people, is you are passionate and not just having an interest, but passionate about like having a greater impact, passionate about like serving people in some way in a specific niche. But that yeah, the why is what's going to keep you going when the going gets tough because if it's just an interest, it gets a little hard and you're going to be like, you know what, actually, I'm not really that interested in this anymore. But if it's something that you really, truly, um, feel passionate about and it's something that you really do want to make a difference with, that's what's going to keep you going. Like, that's what's going to propel you forward. And yeah, just to add on to your point, like it's absolutely the first step in anyone's journey if you want to become an entrepreneur, if you want to like pursue your own business, like it really, that piece really has to be there.
Agreed. I agree. So, what has the journey been like for you of going gluten free, turning into a healthier lifestyle? Because I know that's part of
Mhm.
your story too, of like the big changes that you've made over the last few years. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's when I when I went gluten free, like my approach, of course, at first I was really just super excited to find any gluten free options, any anything that was deep fried and carby and whatever. And I still love that. I still absolutely, that to me is like one of my greatest discoveries is when I can find something of that nature to share with people because it is such a novelty. But, eating when it became a big part of my job was to eat out all the time and to, be eating all these carby, delicious things. My health actually started to get impacted where I just felt really sluggish and kind of gross all the time because I wasn't really nourishing my body. I was eating a lot of the novelty food items. And so it really, about a couple years into my journey, I mean, I would classify myself as healthy, but it was a couple years into my journey where like my health really was kind of starting to be impacted again. And it forced me to kind of evaluate how I was going about things and being really mindful with, if I'm consuming like dining out X number of times this week, like I need to couple it with regular exercise. I need to couple it with movement and some capacity because that's what's going to make me feel really good. And when I started doing that and I started doing it more regularly, I felt really good. And when I started being really mindful not just about what kind of gluten-free items I was eating, but just really paying attention to like how I was nourishing my body and making sure that I'm supplementing my diet with vitamins that I need. I'm deficient in a couple things, so I just started really like tuning in. And the interesting thing is in Toronto specifically, like the wellness space is really blowing up. And I always had an interest in wellness and holistic health because it was actually a holistic practitioner that helped me diagnose myself
Hmm.
years ago. It was not my Western doctors, it was a naturopath. So I've always believed in a holistic approach. So when I was like growing my brand here, a lot of people assumed I was a nutritionist because I was gluten free. So I would get invited to a lot of these types of events, and I was really ingrained in a lot of that, and I loved it. And there was a couple moments where I'm like, maybe I should be one, but it wasn't ultimately my path. Like it was just like, no, like I like learning from them, but I don't want to be one. So, yeah, my journey really, I have to credit a lot of my peers with helping me with that. They educated me. They, they're talking about it on their platforms and they're sharing, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like I really resonate with that. And so it's then kind of woven into my brand and who I am, because that is a big part of me. Like I do take a more holistic approach to being gluten free. Yes, of course, I get excited to share, like I said, the gluten free croissants or the gluten free like fried fish or whatever it
Sure.
is. But like I also that's not how I eat on a regular basis. And I'm very vocal about, look, like I don't eat dairy either. I limit my sugar intake. I take a more natural approach to gluten free. I opt for the naturally gluten free food items most times. But hell,
Hmm.
if I love a gluten free pizza, I love gluten free pasta. I'm just more mindful with it. So I think that's really kind of come into a big part of who I am, and what my brand stands for, just because that's been my personal experience with it. So, movement, mindful eating in the sense of like just paying attention to what I'm eating, how it makes me feel, and indulging when I want to indulge. And I don't even want to say like indulging like cheat meals. It's just like when I feel like eating that, and it feels right, like I'll do it. Like I'm
Right.
not gonna limit or restrict myself. And there's definitely moments, and I'm sure you can relate to it, especially if I'm traveling to like a new place and I'm like, okay, I gotta go to like 20 places in one day. I'll
Yes.
eat my way through cities or countries, and then I'm like, whew, I need salads for the next couple weeks because that's just what my body craves. But I listen to what my body is telling me, and I think that's been like the best approach for me and my body and my health.
Absolutely. No, and I relate after my like 3 week US trip, I was like, I need all the salads, like all salads.
It looked great. I was like, okay, need to go here, need to go here. But yeah, it gets to a point where you're like, I don't want to eat out anymore. And I'm always like, I'm doing it for the people. I'm doing it for the I
I
do a couple like
understand.
gluten-free like food tours every once in a while, and I'll bring like gluten-free friends of mine along. And like I've done multiple of them that like I will only eat like a little bit at each place now. And my friends are like gorging and they're like so excited. I'm like, guys, no. Rookie mistake. You gotta go in low and low. You gotta ease into it because you're gonna die by the last place. You're not gonna be able to eat anything. So I've got
Exactly.
like a little bit of a technique when it comes to like gorging on multiple places in a day, but it's fun.
I love that. So you also have a podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Of course. Yeah. So that was actually, so I would say the podcast. So I have it with another friend of mine who's also a gluten free, grain free blogger, Becca. And her and I actually met through Instagram, but we're both based in Toronto. And when we met, it was like kindred spirits. We're like, we're the same person. Like, what the hell? How have I not met you before? And a big thing that we really jived with or vibed with, if you will, is our interest in wellness and spirituality and exploring realms beyond food, because that was what our platforms were so focused on. But we really came together and we're like, look, like we have so many of the same interests and so many things that we feel like we're not quite ready to share on our individual platforms, but that we want to share. So podcasting was kind of just getting big. Like now podcasting is everywhere, so it's crazy. We started it about 2 years ago, yeah, almost 2 years ago now. And so it was really our way of expressing on a different platform our exploration with like spirituality, personal development, entrepreneurship, of course, like diet and food, and but wellness in general. So the podcast gets experts on like every week. We talk about something to do along those lines that I just mentioned. We get really deep on topics that we're fascinated in, topics that are trending, topics that people are requesting for us. So we wanted to bring accessible wellness, accessible spirituality to our listeners. Like we wanted to allow people to navigate their own wellness and spiritual journeys, and we wanted to support them along that. So introducing them to different things so that they could be like, oh, like that resonates with me, I want to start to do that. Or a lot of things, like even for myself, like I feel like my business has had greater success because of the podcast, because every week I'm sitting with these experts. I feel like my spiritual practice has grown. I feel like my mindset has shifted. I feel like my overall health, gut health specifically, has changed because I'm talking to people who are bringing things up, like things like I remember we had someone on and they were talking about like the importance of collagen and L-glutamine, and how if you have an autoimmune condition, you're likely to have leaky gut, and these things that I was just like, whoa, mind blown. Skin has improved. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I benefited the most from the podcast, and Becca says the same. And it's because of the experts we get on every week. So the podcast is called Vibe Tribe Wellness. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and yeah, we pop on every week, and sometimes we do solo episodes, but mostly we're interviewing others, and we want to help others share their stories, and we want to also educate and yeah educate and share with our listeners. And people just love, I guess, like our approach, like how we're talking right now is how we deliver the content through our podcast. Like it's real. It's like you're sitting in our living room having a conversation with us. So I think that's what people love the most about it, and it's fun. I mean, everyone loves podcasts nowadays, so we're just fortunate
Yeah.
to have this platform to share and get deeper on things that I probably wouldn't get that deep with on social. So it's cool.
I love that. So people can find you there. And then where else
Yeah,
can they find you?
yeah. So find me on Instagram. Freedom Range is my handle. If you want to check out my gluten free site, it's glutenfreedominc.com. Lots of travel reviews, lots of restaurant reviews, specifically or primarily Toronto, GTA, which is the surrounding area of Toronto. But I do travel a lot. So I've got, recaps of all sorts of places I've been. And then my restaurant directory, which I think is like the number one reason most people come to my site. So if you're in the area or anywhere in Canada and you want to pop on to see what restaurants I've got listed, that's a great place. And then I mentioned briefly, I do one-to-one coaching for anyone. I call them wellness entrepreneur. So anyone who's looking to start their own um, business or blog or social account that's based around your passion project, anything from being a wellness practitioner, wellness entrepreneur, wellness blogger. I mean, that's my forte. I don't limit it just to that, but that's my bread and butter. But so you can find that at freedomschool.co. And I think that's kind of it. I think I've covered everything. If you want to follow our Instagram for the podcast, it's This Is Vibe Tribe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So anything else you want to say about yourself or celiac or anything?
Well, I love that it's Celiac Awareness Month, first and foremost. It's like my favorite month of the year, beside from my birthday month. And I just love, honestly, I think what's so great is like what you're doing. And like, I'm just grateful that you asked me to be a part of this. I think what you're doing, I was actually thinking this morning, I'm just like, I think it's rad what you're doing. You've done so much, even just like your Pinterest boards are epic. Your guides are amazing. You're dialed into the community, and you're giving others a platform in the community to share. And I think, like, yeah, this morning I was just like, you know what, I'm grateful for you and for what you're doing. And I just think it's really cool to see, what's progressed in the gluten-free community, in the gluten-free world, the conversations that are out there, the awareness that's out there, the accessibility of everything. Like, it's a really cool time to be in this movement, in this community. And I'm grateful that I am a part of it, and that I am able to help others navigate their journey. So yeah, thank you for giving me a platform today to share a bit more. And yeah, I'm grateful that we've been able to connect.
I am too. Thank you so much. And thanks for saying that. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate
No,
that.
yeah, no, you're doing an amazing thing. Like, you really are. So we need more trailblazers like you out there, because there's more than enough room for all of us to thrive.
There absolutely is. So I'm just so happy to connect with you because I know we have
God,
such similar missions and
yeah,
hearts and perspectives on stuff. So thank you.
thank you. Have a great day. And where are you, by the way? I never know where you
I'm in Vietnam right now.
are. Okay, you
So
are.
yeah, yeah, I'm in Vietnam.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much, girl.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.